As always, we hope to impart to you some useful automotive information and perhaps provoke some automotive conversation on this beautiful Saturday morning in the Mohawk Valley. Allegedly, we're going to have a little rain today. We haven't seen it yet, so we use the word allegedly. But get out this morning and enjoy our summer, such as it is. Got a lot of great stuff to talk about today, but first, I want to get to our car care tip of the week. That's the 7 signs of a bad wheel alignment. If you ever gone to the grocery store or big store, you can do a little shopping, so you grab yourself a shopping cart. And you ever pushed one that has an out of whack wheel? Yeah, it doesn't steer too well, and it kind of gets wobbly and gets kind of goofy. Well, if you ever had that happen to you, then you understand instantly the value of the importance of a wheel alignment. So when you think about hearing that ugly sound that comes from one of the front wheels, or you have to push it harder with your right hand than with your left hand to get the thing to go straight, or maybe you feel the rear wheel kind of scrub along the edge while the other one rolls nice and easy. Of course, when you see that kind of stuff, what do? Well, you go ditch the cart, right, and you go get another one. And you probably do that before you get halfway down aisle 1. You say, nope, this one's not going to work, and you go get another one. Well, on your car, an out-of-whack wheel can mean more than just an annoyance. When you talk about wheel alignment, a poor alignment increases rolling resistance on your car. And, of course, the higher rolling resistance means greater wear on your tires. And, again, less efficiency for your car, which in other words means less gas mileage. And, of course, recognizing the price of gas is pretty reasonable right now. It doesn't mean you want to waste it. You still got to pay for it. It comes out of your pocket. And, of course, tires are not cheap. I mean, the longest tire life and the best ride and handling comes from your car happens when everything's lined up correctly. So when should you have your alignment done? And there's a lot of schools of thoughts on this. But you should have your alignment checked whenever you rotate your tires, or about once a year. Now, if you're rotating your tires every 5,000 or 6,000 miles, I don't think you need to have your alignment checked every 5,000 or 6,000 miles, but probably every other one at the longest period of time. And what's nice is when you look at how easy that can happen on today's modern alignment technology, many big tire shops and places that work on car alignments have basically can drive over the machine and it'll tell you if your alignment needs of if you have a need or not. Granted, they're measuring just the simple toe, but that's usually the first thing that you want to check when you're checking your wheel alignment. And of course, we all know how good the roads are. You ever hit a pothole? Probably every day, right? Or what about, have you ever accidentally whacked a curb while trying to parallel park, for example? Again, these things cause wheel alignment issues. So let's talk about different things that happen that give you an idea that you got a bad wheel alignment. First, is the car pulled to the left or pulled to the right? Does it veer in one direction when you cruise on a straight, smooth road? You need to keep pressure on the steering wheel to keep the car straight. So let me give you a little experiment you can try next time you're out. Maybe do this today. On a smooth, straight road with no other traffic around, again, at highway speed, take your hands off the steering wheel a little bit. In other words, keep them, half an inch away. But put the car straight, get your speed steady, and just pull your hands a little bit away from the wheel. Again, so you can grab it instantly to gain control, but just about half an inch away, and just see what happens. Now, most roads have a crown in the center for rain runoff, which can subtly affect the vehicle's path. But the car should continue on its course fairly well without you holding the wheel. Then you can start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. You get up to 15 or 20 and the car's staying straight, you're in pretty good shape with that. If you take your hand off the wheel and the car just starts drifting right into the shoulder of the road, or goes the other way, especially imagine it's going uphill towards the crown, you could have a problem. And one certain problem you could have is an underinflated tire. So the first thing you want to check before you think about it being wheel alignment is always check your tire pressures. Another sign of a alignment issue is a cockeyed logo. The car makers generally put the logo of the vehicle right in the center of the steering wheel. So there you are looking at your steering wheel, and basically it's right across the front of the wheel. Well, what I mean by cockeyed is if you're driving down the road and you have to hold the wheel, let's say, at the 1 o'clock position to keep the car going straight, the logo is not going to be straight anymore, is it? In other words, if it is off, even a few degrees even from the 12 o'clock position to keep it, again, that you're looking at it straight, if you have to put that steering wheel to like the 1 o'clock position or the 11 o'clock position to keep the car straight, that steering wheel logo is not going to be straight across the front anymore, is it? It's going to be cockeyed. Well, that's a real indication that you have an alignment problem. And again, that would be something you want to have checked. So the two quickest things you could do as a driver is note those things. But there's 5 other things we're going to talk about that will also give you an indication of a bad wheel alignment. For example, uneven tire wear. Now, if you have tires that are worn on one edge, that's probably the surest sign of a misaligned wheel. So, for example, increased wear on the inside edge compared to the outside wedge, or vice versa, you want to have that looked at right away. So what's happening is your tire is literally scrubbing as it's going down the road. What's interesting is if you were to stand there and look at your feet and you put your toes out or put your toes in, like out like pigeon-toed or in, that's what happens to your tires on the front of your car. It's toed in or toed out. And believe it or not, as little as 1/8 of an inch off can really cause some tire wear on your tires. And that's interesting because that's really a very minor adjustment. But it just gives you an idea of how critical that measurement is. Another part of the alignment is called the camber. Now imagine if you took a coin and held it on the tabletop with your finger so that it's straight. In other words, you're about to roll it, so to speak. Now tip it to the left and to the right with your finger. That's camber. And your tire can either be cambered in or cambered out. In other words, tilted from the top, away from the car, which is out, or towards the middle of the car, that would be in, right? If your camber is off by even a couple of degrees, that can cause tire wear upwards of 20% just on one edge of your tire. Now, what happens if you have tire wear on both edges of the tire? That's usually indicates serious underinflation. The tire sidewalls support the weight of the vehicle. So if you have a 2-edge wear pattern, that tells me you've been driving around with your tires underinflated for quite a while. The sad part is if you've noticed that with 2 edges worn with the naked eye, it may be too late to actually save the tires. Again, this is when you use a tire tread depth gauge and you check across the face of the tire the tread depth on the left side, the middle, and the right side. And you can write them down, and you can get an idea of how much tread you have across the tire. Another thing that happens to tires is ribs worn on one edge. If you run your finger across the face of the tread, and if you take care of how to feel the inside and outside edges of each of the rubber ribs that are sticking up, like little islands of rubber, and then you've got void areas in between them. Does it feel uniform across the face, or do you feel the edges of these ribs? That's called feathering. And I could tell you that it's one of the things I used to do when I was in the car business. I literally just close my eyes and run my hand across the tire face. And if I felt that feathering, I knew there was an alignment problem somewhere. that's something that you may not be able to feel yourself unless you're used to it. But if it's really exaggerated, you'll notice it yourself pretty easily. But of course, once a tire wears like this, you can't unwear it. In other words, once the pattern's in a tire, you can't really change it. One of the other things that is noticeable in alignment wear is poor recovery on turns. So, for example, after you make a turn, the steering wheel should return to the center promptly without feeling loose or difficult to control. In other words, you make a turn and you kind of let the wheel just kind of slide between your fingers, and it goes right back to straight pretty easily. If it doesn't do that, or you feel a binding of any kind, that generally tells you there's a loose steering or suspension component. But you may just need a wheel alignment. Again, you want to have this checked. Obviously, if you have a hard shimmy or the steering wheel shaking, that could be caused by a number of problems, including misalignment. And one of the things that people notice, if you ever seen a car do crab walking, it's kind of where you watch, does the body seem to move a little bit sideways when you're watching a car go down the street? When that happens, there's usually two things at work here. Either something in a collision has happened to the back of the car, something got hit, or the rear wheels are way out of alignment. Remember that the center line of the vehicle, if you can imagine a center line going down the middle of the vehicle, all four wheels have to be pretty much perpendicular to the center line. If the rear wheels are off a little, it's going to try to push the car in one direction or the other. And what you do is you compensate by turning the steering wheel the opposite way, and all of a sudden the car looks like it's going down the road sideways. We used to see this with cars with spring leaves in the back, where the rear axle would shift a little bit. And then over the years, other manufacturers began putting toe and camber alignments on the rear wheels. And basically, when you're aligning your car nowadays, you should always get what's called a four-wheel alignment. Don't ever just line the front end up. What you want is the alignment machine hooked up with four heads on it. So basically what happens is the first thing the machine does is it checks the rear wheels to the center line, then it checks the front wheels in alignment to the rear wheels. And that's how you keep it all straight. But you require a nice alignment machine for that. And the good news is we've got lots of shops around with really good alignment machines. So, folks, to wrap this up, if you have any of these symptoms, you may want to get your car alignment checked. And I would have it checked every other tire rotation, or at least once a year.